I come from a musical family. My father is a cello player and a professional cello player. My mother also plays the cello as an amateur. My grandfather was an organ player and a piano player. My grandmother as well. Well, there's music all over the place in my family. So I think growing up, music was just for me a normal part of life. It was not something that I was thinking about or planning. It was just slowly, when you are surrounded by music all the time, and when you are also surrounded by people who love music and who are very passionate about music, then it's actually automatically, I think, when you have a feeling for it yourself, it grows in you. And I never had I never actually planned when I was younger to have a career in music, but it did happen like that. And of course, my family was in Western classical music, and I made a turn because when I was 18 years old, I went to India and I started learning Indian classical music. But I've always felt that somehow no matter which style you're in, there is something similar. There's something similar about the passion for music, the way it sort of takes over your life, and the love that people have for the music that they make. That you can sort of, it's universal.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. So that was my inspiration. That was actually my youth, and of course everything that happened after that in my journey through Indian classical music.
Wow.
Yeah, there have been many people that have influenced my musical approach. Of course. Every teacher that I had. I mean, I'm not saying this out of compulsion, let's say, but it's true. Because a teacher is, when you are with a teacher for a while, it's a huge influence, and it's a huge inspiration, and not every teacher is the same, but that is also very beautiful. So if I think about my first teacher, for instance, he lived in Delhi. He's no more there, but his name is Joy Shrivastava. He was important. He was the first one actually to show me something about this music, and he was a very spirited human being and a very, very genuine person and a very genuine lover of this music. And that, of course, is a very important, let's say, very important influence, because it really opens up then an interest and a love, and it was a very beautiful way to get to know this music. Similarly, my teacher in Rotterdam, because I was in the conservatory in Rotterdam for several years, Koos de Vrij, also no longer there, but he was a vocalist, a very different personality again, but he gave me a lot of ground, a lot of, let's say, ground, I can't find another word, a sort of ground from which to grow, let's say. And my teacher in Mumbai, who was my most recent teacher, Heiko Dijker, he again had a different influence. You know, he was a very emotional player, and he took me in that side, gave me a lot. And now I'm only talking about a few important teachers that I had, but then there is so much more influence from sometimes from concerts that you actually go to. You know, it can be mind-blowing what you can experience there. It can be even from fellow students. It can be your own experience of playing and finding a lot of things. Again, my father was an influence because we cooperated also later. And he was also very when you're interacting music, actually it's impossible not to learn, and it's also impossible not to be inspired. I think that is what happens. So inspiration, of course, also comes from life. I mean, every aspect of it, and from love, from nature. Well, and once you're in it, it's endless.
Absolutely.
Your question, but I do know that this situation of being able to find so much incredible music on the internet is, besides from it being maybe complicated, but also a very rich source of not only nowadays recordings, but you can find anything. You know, you can find recordings from 60 years ago, and it's quite a treasure, actually. So I think in that sense it opens up more. It actually opened up more the musical access that you have. I actually talk from the perspective of my instrument, the violin, because I started when I was 6 years old, which is a sort of normal age in the West to start a violin studies. It doesn't mean that when you are 10 years old and you have a passion, you can't do it anymore. Of course, I think when you have a passion, you can learn anything at any time in your life. True. It does, however, give a more easy way in, let's say, if you start young. It is the same like with any kind of thing that you learn, actually. It's the younger you are, the more naturally you take over what is taught to you. Of course, it's important that you learn well. I mean, if you start learning at 6 and you are taught, for instance, a technique which doesn't really work, then it doesn't work for you, because later in your life you will have to change it, and to change something is much more difficult, actually, than to learn it initially. So I would say for a violin, 6 years old is fine, 7 is fine, 8 is fine. I mean, whenever the passion arises, and it is easier when you start earlier. That's the only thing. And for your other question, what I love about teaching, I really enjoy, and that's actually not only to my students, but even to myself, I enjoy the process of looking at something. So a student, let's say a student is playing something, you're listening to it, and to try to think, what is not yet working? What is still lacking? Where is this student in its development? And I do it the same with me. I mean, with myself, I like the process of looking what is needed here. And that is different for every student. I mean, of course, you start the same. Violin is a very technically difficult instrument. So technique is important. And that is hard work in the beginning also. But it is very nice to sort of look at the situation and to really try to think, okay, what does this student need right now? What kind of exercise? Because many things go through exercise. And I really like that process. And then you can see that when somebody is taking over the exercise, then it actually helps and it works, and the person also feels it works. And sometimes it does not work, and then you have to think again, okay, how can I get this person further along the line as a teacher? The student has to feel motivated and has to feel open to learn. When the student is open to learn and motivated, and ideally a student likes practice, not every student likes practice, but it does really help in the process, of course, then it's very nice. I really like to teach, and I like the whole, yes, of course. My routine before a performance, I have to think about that, because I have not a very set routine, but ideally, of course, You are the main thing is that you are, let's say, you feel comfortable and you are in practice. And with that I mean the further you get in this music, the less you actually have to prepare for let's say for a single concert. It becomes more and more something that is just happening in the moment. Even the choice of raag, for instance, can happen right there, which is very nice because you sit up and the audience is there and you sort of feel really free to feel, okay, what is this moment asking for? What do I feel? That's very nice. So in a little bit further stage in this music, there's only one important thing. That's, let's say, your instrument and your technique have to work. It's like your vehicle in a way, and then you can drive wherever you want to, and that is that creates an amazing freedom. In that sense, also, I don't have to prepare so much right before I go on stage. And I think the moment we step on stage, there is a certain natural thing happening of, in a way, going really close to yourself. It's maybe a bit vague, but it is something of course you connect to the tabla player because you're going to do this together, you know, you're going to make this journey together. So you connect to the tabla player, and then right before the first note, because, well, in an Indian classical performance, as you know, the melody instrument or the singer or whatever always starts with a sort of slower introduction of the raag, and it's very free. So right before that first note, there is a moment of, I guess what it is that you extremely connect to the here and now of the moment. Everything else disappears and it is just here and now, and it is almost as if there is a blank page in front of you and you are free to start writing on it. And it's amazing. Or, you know, we were talking about skiing. There is this amazing skiing slope. Nobody has been on it yet, and you can go anywhere you want, you know. It's that feeling, actually. And it's a real joy to jump into that, and especially when you come to the stage where you feel really that kind of freedom. So that's what I can say about my you ask maybe about ritual or maybe
performance.
Right before performance. It's actually all in the moment right before you start. That is where it happens. Then it's sort of the concentration and the focus becomes very clear, and then you start the music, and then you really dive into it, and at a certain point the tabla player joins in. And then after some time, it can be anything, of course, time-wise, then you have made your journey. And then it's almost as if you come out of that, you know, you step out of that and you're like, oh, you're still here, you know? It's quite incredible, actually. It's really, really great to make this music in that way, to me.